5 seconds. I'm going to wait until it can see us. 2, 1. If we're live right now, I'm not sure if we are, but we'll wait for a few more people to join before we get this guy going.
Sounds good.
All right, looks like we are live. We got some people on here. Jacob Seuss, Jonathan Acosta. Jonathan, this is the biggest Arkansas game day in quite some time. It's funny because I feel like we've said that a million times this week. You know, the Texas game, the Texas A&M game, you know, it's the biggest Arkansas game in decades. But today is actually the biggest one.
That's what happens when you win. You climb up the rankings, you start to play. You start off with the non-conference schedule, and you start off with teams like Rice, Georgia Southern. But then when you start playing teams like Texas, A&M, and then Georgia, if you keep winning, those games keep getting added meaning. And Arkansas fans and the team haven't had that for a while, but this season already off to a special start. When you get off to a 4-0 start and then you start to climb into that meat of the SEC schedule, you start to have games like this when there are top 10 matchups in front of a national audience.
Yeah, and Arkansas is not a secret anymore, obviously. They're 8th in the country now. They're 4-0. College game days there. They got SEC Nation a couple weeks ago. It's a whole thing. Arkansas is not a secret. But let's jump into probably one of the most important things that's going to happen today. It was kind of something that developed late this week, was that Georgia starting quarterback JT Daniels went from, oh, he's hurt, to, oh, he's probable, doubtful. Well, coming into today, Georgia backup quarterback Stetson Bennett, he's been warming up with the first team. So it looks like Arkansas is going to avoid Georgia's starting quarterback, which obviously gives them a huge advantage coming into today's game.
And it's kind of funny because I feel like Arkansas has had, I don't want to say they're lucky, but they faced Hudson Card for Texas. He's not starting anymore. They got Zach Calzada against A&M. So maybe it's the stars are aligning for Arkansas that they get to face Stetson Bennett. Bennett came in and played well in last year's meeting that Dwan Mathis started, but then they were down, I think it was 7-5, and then he comes in and then Georgia kind of pulls away. But JT Daniels is the starter for a reason. He was really good at USC, got replaced by Keen Slovis after his injury. But he's been solid this year for Georgia. He missed the game against UAB, but other than that, he's been really efficient, especially on third down. 16 of 18 so far this year on third down. So Georgia having to go with Stetson Bennett obviously is better for Arkansas than if they had to play JT Daniels today.
Yeah, and Bennett, he's going to come into this game. You have to think he's nervous, right? He knows the stakes in this game. It's an 11 a.m. game. He knows it's on ESPN, you know, and he's just getting the start. He's played this year. It's not like he's in this inexperienced backup coming in.
And he's played in big games, but in the big games that he's played in, he's made a few mistakes. I remember he put up some decent numbers against Alabama and Florida last year. Those were the two big regular season games that Georgia played in. But he also had a couple of costly mistakes in those games, and Georgia ended up losing those games. Well, here's another top 10 matchup, and you have to figure Barry Odom's defense is just licking their chops.
They get to go
after Stetson Bennett. They're going to try to make him uncomfortable, especially because it's not like he's been practicing all season with the ones or preparing for this moment. This is the Clemson game was big because it was the first game of the season, but they had all summer to prepare for Clemson.
Sure.
They get only a week to prepare for Arkansas, and this wasn't a game that Georgia had circled on their calendar.
No,
so
not at all.
Defense is probably looking to make Stetson Bennett look very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and if you guys are with us right now, let us know where you're watching the game today, your score prediction, if you have any questions for us before kickoff in about a half hour. But on the other side, Arkansas has had their injury issues as well. KJ Jefferson was questionable coming into this game. I don't think any of us thought that injury was as serious as it was. Because on Monday, Sam Pittman said that no worries, he's going to be a full go. But he said to ESPN on College Game Day, he's going to be a game-time decision. It looks like KJ Jefferson will start, but if he's not mobile in that pocket, if he can't move around with that knee, that presents a big issue for that Arkansas offense.
Especially because so much of what the Arkansas offense does when they're successful revolves around KJ being able to run with his legs. That trait is never as important as it would be today against that Georgia defensive line, led by Jordan Davis and Devontae White. It's the best defense. We said the A&M defensive line last week was elite. Georgia's defensive line is the elite of the elite. Georgia's defense is the top defense in the country. So having KJ being able to run, keep that defense honest, provide, open up the play action, Georgia brings an extra safety into the box, opens up one-on-ones on the outside for Treylon Burks to go beat man coverage. Without that threat of KJ's legs, Georgia's able to have a lighter box, drop another defensive back into coverage, and make KJ beat them strictly with his arm while still having that pass rush with that defensive line.
Right, and he's gotten better with his arm the last 2 weeks, but to start the year, I mean, it wasn't there.
No, for sure. And either way, even if he has been improving with his arm, it still makes it that much easier when you're going against fewer guys in coverage because of your threat with your legs. So we'll see. Maybe because KJ tried to come play a little bit last week after that injury, didn't really have it, and then they pop in Malik Hornsby for a quarter and a half. It'll be interesting to see how long the leash is on KJ, with what they do to try and make him feel healthy. Do they give him a run or two on the first drive just to see, hey, let's see if you're healthy and 100%? And if he's not, do they pop in Malik, or do they try to kind of guard him a little bit and try to keep him safe a little bit and see what he can do?
On the other side, I don't think we really know. I don't think anyone really knows what this Georgia team is all about. Coming into the year, they were obviously ranked high. They were a good team. They beat Clemson week 1. It's like, okay, this Georgia team is legit. Now, 3 weeks later, it's not as good a win anymore. Clemson obviously not among the best of the best in college football anymore. They're barely ranked anymore. And besides that, they've beaten Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and UAB. So they don't have a good win in there, besides that Clemson game, which by the end of the year probably won't look like a good win anymore. So today is really the first tough test Georgia has faced all year. So I don't think we've even seen this year how these Bulldogs are against a top-tier opponent.
And it kind of goes back to that defense is ranked number 1, but all of the offenses that they've played, they rank in the bottom 20% of the country. Now, granted, part of the reason they rank in the bottom 20% is because they've played against Georgia.
So those stats, I don't want to say they lie, but they're a little deceiving.
They're a little deceiving, a little misleading. Arkansas has had definitely a way tougher schedule. So when you go out and see that Arkansas is the 8th ranked rushing offense. Well, 2 of the games that they've done is against Power 5 opponents in Texas and Texas A&M. So those stats are legit. And we're not saying Georgia's defense is not legit, just that Arkansas is by far the toughest opponent that they will have faced so far. So we'll see. They're at home. It's a big game. It looked like the stands were filling up pretty quickly. So this will be another test for Arkansas as well, because Arkansas hasn't played a true road game yet so far this season either.
Right.
And so for the first one to be between the hedges there in Athens.
Not fun.
That's a difficult first road game.
Yeah, so, I think it definitely helps that it's an 11 a.m. kick and not 6 p.m. Maybe the fans will be a little less rowdy, but you do get that tough environment of Sanford Stadium. Georgia leads the nation, averaging 17 points in the first quarter. So one big thing that's really stood out for me this week when we've been kind of studying up on this game is Arkansas needs to survive early. They need to settle into this game, because if Georgia takes an early lead, it's not a team you want to play catch-up against, especially if Malik Hornsby is in. You're going to have trouble if you're trailing by 10, 14 points getting yourself back in this game. So I think they need to survive the first quarter, let the crowd settle in, let Arkansas's nerves settle into this game, and then by the second quarter, if you're still in this game, anything can happen.
Especially because if you fall behind early, 2 things. It gets the crowd, the Georgia crowd, really into it, and they become a factor in when you're on offense. And the other thing it does is it allows that Georgia defense to pin its ears back and just go full speed at you instead of trying to figure out, like, the Georgia defense isn't off balance if Georgia's up 14-0, 17-0. They just get to go right at you, especially if it's Hornsby in at quarterback instead of KJ. If it's KJ, he has a little more experience. He's able to kind of manage the situation. But the last thing you want to do, like you said, if it's Hornsby, you fall behind by a couple scores. So, again, that's why the running game is so important. It kind of shortens the game, extends the drives, keeps the defense off the field. The Arkansas defense has been, we saw it against A&M. They can take over a game and win the game for Arkansas, but you don't want to have to put them in that situation repeatedly.
And that's so funny, because going back to last week, I mean, what was the storyline going into that game? It was A&M's defense. What was the storyline going into this game? It's Georgia's defense. Why is no one talking about the Arkansas defense? I mean, they're never the storyline. They're never, you have to go up against the Arkansas defense. But they've shut down everyone left and right this year. But I think they also enjoy, they don't need to be talked about. They're that blue-collar, hard-working unit under Barry Odom. They don't care if anyone's talking about them. They're gonna save their play and their talk for the field.
And the hard-working, I think, is the key phrase there, because you see at every level of the defense, in the secondary, at linebacker, at defensive line, they've had playmakers step up and make their name at each position group. In the secondary, obviously, you have Jalen Catalon.
Right.
You also have Fouché and Greg Brooks. At linebacker, that trio is probably one of the best trio of linebackers so far in the SEC, if not the country, with Bumper Pool, Henry. And then at defensive line, obviously, you've had the transfers really step up. I think that might be the biggest key so far this year on defense for Arkansas is the transfers making a difference on the defensive line. John Ridgway, the two Mizzou transfers, Trey Williams and Markel Utsey. We saw Trey Williams have maybe the game of his life against
great.
Texas A&M. And so that was against Zach Calzada, a backup quarterback. If they're going against another one, Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett, he's got some legs, but he's not the most mobile guy in the room. You know, he's certainly not KJ Jefferson out there. So it's another chance for maybe Trey Williams and John Ridgway to go make an impact and kind of wreak havoc in that backfield.
Yeah, absolutely. We're about 20 minutes until kickoff here, 11 a.m. on ESPN. Drop us your score predictions right now. I want to know what you guys are thinking headed into this one. I'm always a big fan of the rah-rah storylines coming into this one. And Sam Pittman returning to Georgia is one of those. He played Georgia last year. He played Kirby Smart last year here in Fayetteville. So it's not the first time they're going up against each other. But Pittman was at Georgia for a long time when they were super successful. So I guess what I'm thinking coming into this one is, how do they play against each other? You know, Pittman talked about that a lot this week. You don't want to ruin your team by overthinking it, but Kirby Smart obviously knows how Sam Pittman likes to game plan, how he likes to run his team coming into this one. But on the other side, Sam Pittman knows all about Kirby Smart too. So it's kind of what tricks is each coach going to run to kind of throw off the other one.
Especially running that kind of offensive line, you get to see Georgia's calling card up close, which was their defense. Kirby Smart's a defensive guy, so he has his hands all over that Georgia defense. And I think that's the biggest benefit for Sam Pittman. Like, he was an offensive line coach at Georgia, so it's not like he was the one putting together the offensive game plan. So I feel like this is a situation where Sam Pittman might have a little more intel on Kirby Smart and what Georgia likes to do than Kirby Smart having intel on what Sam Pittman likes to do for Arkansas. So it'll be interesting to see because, like you said, sometimes you can get in the habit of overthinking things, and then that gets down to the team, and then you kind of see it on the field. But we'll see. Arkansas is a more talented team this year.
Yes.
They're obviously playing with more confidence this season. It's Sam Pittman's second year instead of his first one like last year.
Right.
So I think we'll see a very different game than the 37-10.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's got to be an emotional game for Pittman because he's not in the spot he is today without those years he spent under Kirby Smart. And he obviously credited Smart for a lot of his success, turning him into the coach he is today, you know, during his press conferences this week, all that good stuff. But once we get on the field, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But if Arkansas wins this game, they're in the college football playoff conversation, without a doubt. I honestly think if they win this game, they should jump Bama for the time being as the #1 team in the country. Frankly, just because of the teams they beat. You have A&M, Texas, and Georgia. But like I said, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. I don't know if Arkansas is going to win this game. I don't know. I didn't know if they were going to beat A&M or Texas just because such challenging opponents.
I think this game has a little bit different feel. I think a lot of Hog fans were very optimistic going into the Texas game. They felt like they had something. Then after being Texas, certainly going into the A&M game, I feel like even though Arkansas was the underdog, I feel like most people, even in the media, were on Arkansas.
Yes.
This game feels a little bit different just because of Georgia's been one of those elite, like, playoff contenders now for a while, but especially coming into the season, they were seen as a team that could even challenge Bama for the SEC title. And obviously Vegas feels the same way. Like Arkansas in that Texas game was a 6.5-point dog. In the A&M game, they were a 5.5-point dog. This one, they came in at 18.5 points.
That's disrespectful.
That's disrespectful.
That's rude.
The line has dropped a little bit in Vegas with the JT Daniels injury news, but it's still 16.5 points. It's more than 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying whether I think Georgia's going to win or whether I think Arkansas is going to win.
Right.
But I think if you're a betting person, I think it'd be smart to put your money on Arkansas with the 16.5 points.
Absolutely.
Just because it feels like the way they run the ball on offense, the way the defense kind of keeps them in games, A, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a shootout. And so, B, if it's a low-scoring game, that's less of a margin for error for Georgia to kind of run up the score and cover the spread. You know, it feels like even if Arkansas loses, like it's hard to imagine them not being within 2 touchdowns. In this game.
Absolutely, and Jason Skurbitz here thinks Arkansas is going to stay in the game, either 10 points or a touchdown. And listen, these guys don't want moral victories. That's not something we're going for here. But as a fan of the Razorbacks, if they do wind up losing their first game of the season today, but they stick with Georgia every step of the way, lose by 10, lose by 7, such a good sign going forward. They wouldn't even drop far in the rankings.
And we've seen teams gain respect from close losses. If you look back to the Alabama-Florida game, Florida loses by 2 to Alabama. Florida, I think, stood firm at number 11 in the AP poll.
Right.
Moved up to number 10 now this week, but in the eyes of the media and kind of nationwide, Florida gained some respect from having a close loss, and that was at home.
Right.
Arkansas is going on the road to
Yes.
Georgia today, so if Arkansas kind of sticks with it, we have the committee rankings coming out, I believe, later this month.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the committee kind of respect close losses to really, really good teams. If Arkansas is 4-1 through 5 weeks with their only loss, a close loss at Georgia, I don't see how people don't continue to consider the Razorbacks a legit team.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I mean, whoever scheduled A&M technically on the road, home game, whatever you want to call it, Arkansas at Georgia, Ole Miss next week. Listen, they didn't like their one trip to Fayetteville, I guess. They didn't like Razorback fans because that's as tough a schedule as it gets, and Arkansas has conquered it every bit of the way so far. Still a long way to go. But before we get you set for kickoff here, only, what do we got, 15 minutes to go. They're going to start right at 11 o'clock. If Arkansas wins this game, how are they going to do it?
I think it goes back to KJ Jefferson being healthy. He has to be healthy for this game. Then, if KJ is healthy...
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. If we do see Malik Hornsby, do you think he's going to throw the ball more today? Because in that A&M game, I don't know if he threw it once.
So the interesting thing was Sam Pittman in that Monday press conference, they asked him about Malik Hornsby, and he said, we have to throw the ball more with him.
If he's going to run every play, that's not going to work.
I think a little bit of what happened against A&M was game flow. Arkansas was up. The defense was playing well, so they didn't want to put Hornsby in a position to lose the game for Arkansas with a costly mistake. Just run the ball, take care of the ball, let the defense continue to do what it was doing because it was controlling the game.
Yeah,
Even though it was
absolutely.
17-10, you never really felt like it felt close, but you never really felt like Arkansas didn't still have the upper hand in that game.
Right, because of that
And then
defense.
especially after the Monteric Brown interception. This week, if Hornsby plays, he has to throw the ball. And Sam Pittman made the comment that they have to throw the ball more with Hornsby. It's just you feel a lot more comfortable throwing the ball with KJ than you do with Malik. And honestly, it would be a tough situation for Malik to go in and make his first start or extended playing time on the road at Georgia.
Right, yeah.
So for Arkansas to win, KJ has to be healthy. And so with KJ being healthy, he has to be a factor in the run game. I think Arkansas, if we're talking about an Arkansas win and then you go in and check the box score, I think it reads KJ Jefferson, 12 carries, 88 yards, a touchdown, something like that, to where he's keeping that defensive line kind of off its feet. And I think Treylon Burks had a big game against A&M. He's our go-to guy. He has to have another big game against Georgia. And then on the defensive side, it's all about creating havoc for Stetson Bennett. If he has all the time in the world back there to throw, find his receivers, Georgia's going to put up points.
You have to make him uncomfortable early, too.
Because we've seen Georgia be able to put up points. They put up gaudy numbers against South Carolina, against Vanderbilt, against UAB. So if they can get back there and make life uncomfortable for him, that's when quarterbacks start to turn the ball over, especially when they don't start a lot of games like Stetson Bennett.
Right. And I think a big thing for Arkansas is today you need to do the little things right. You can't make mistakes. If it's KJ, if it's Malik, it's a game they're going to be nervous in. They know the stakes. You can't have that costly turnover. You can't have that fumble. You need to do things right. You need to keep yourself in the game because this team is more than talented enough to compete with Georgia, but we haven't seen them make those costly turnovers yet or anything, and they need to keep it that way.
You mentioned the small mistakes. The one thing that we have seen a little bit from Arkansas have been penalties. They've gotten a few more penalties than they would have liked against Texas. It didn't come back to bite them. Against A&M, they had some penalties too, especially in the first half, and it didn't necessarily come back to bite them either. But if you have penalties that stall your drives against Georgia, this is going to be field position is going to be huge in this game. Those penalties can be the difference between you having a field goal attempt or punting from your own 40-yard line and pinning them inside their 10. But if you have penalties, maybe you're punting from your 20 or 15 and Georgia gets a short field. That can be the difference of the game. Arkansas, like you said, needs to play clean. No turnovers, few penalties, so that way you're never getting really behind the chains or putting yourselves in bad field position situations.
Yeah, and Arkansas has every bit a chance to play with Georgia today. We're about 10 minutes to kick off now. So we're going to let you guys go get ready for the game. I mean, I hate these 11 a.m. kicks. What do we, I don't think there's chicken wings on tap at 11 o'clock. Maybe some game day pancakes.
Yeah, breakfast with the Hogs, maybe some pancakes, some bacon, some eggs, some orange juice or something.
You have to do it like that. It's Arkansas's first 11 a.m. kick of the season. Hopefully we don't see it too many more times this season. But stick with us throughout the game. We're going to have the live blog. We'll be live here on Facebook after the game. 5 News at 6, of course. We're going to have all your highlights, reaction from Sam Pittman. in, all that good stuff as Arkansas takes on the second-ranked team in the country. We'll see you guys back here on Facebook in a little bit after the game. But for now, enjoy the game, and hopefully we're talking about a Hogs win here in a little bit.
Sounds good.